Okay, welcome in. We've been talking about giving you SEC power rankings, Big J Report.com, SEC power rankings for football, and we'll do that. We also talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, North Florida Entertainment. JC, your boy Richfield is going to be coming to the area, and that's why I have to mention this in the beginning of the podcast because JC might take the entire podcast. Now, if you stay for the entire podcast, we'll be grateful that you did. I'm going to try to make this one kind of a quick one. Rick Springfield, actor, been an actor over the years, older guy now, right? Young guy back when he was making those hits like She's Girl. Rick Springfield is going to be in St. Augustine at the St. Augustine Amphitheater on May 29th of 2025. Tickets for Rick Springfield. I Want My 80s Tour featuring John Waite, Wang Chung, and John Cafferty on May 29th of 2025 at the St. Augustine Amphitheater. And you'll find many, many other shows, Chicago, Gladys Knight Foreigner, in the Neighbors 2 section at bigjreport.com. I saw a report, too, that Uncle Cracker, you remember Uncle Cracker? He's going to be at the Clay County Fair in Green Cove Springs. Uncle Cracker, with a few other artists, too. Uncle Cracker on April the 3rd of 2025 to kind of help open up the Clay County Fair in Green Cove Springs. That will go on from April the 3rd through April the 13th of 2025. There'll be other musical groups over there too, but Uncle Cracker kind of opened things up on April the 3rd of 2025 at the Clay County Fair in Green Cove Springs, Florida. That should be a lot of fun, right? Yeah, should be a lot of fun. Uncle Cracker. Rick Springfield coming to Northeast Florida too, JC. You got the particulars on that one. Weather 44 cool degrees this morning. Morning, February the 17th. We got some rain on Sunday. It got up to like 79, and then we had some rain for probably 2 or 3 hours, and it cleared out, cooled off. High today is only supposed to approach 60. Low tonight back into the 40s, maybe as low as 41. The Teal Shirt Report podcast brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital. The MadMaxMix.weebly.com. We have Mad Max in our prayers. He recently underwent a very serious surgery. And Max, you're in our prayers. You're in our thoughts and hearts. And get better. Get well soon. Where you can get back on the show, the MadMaxMix.weebly.com. Mad Max's Wednesday night request show. Also, Lake Eufaula Hits and JC's live from the pub show on Thursday nights at LakeEufaulaHits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. Jaguars will be hiring a new general manager soon. They've already hired a new coach and former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Now the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen. Tony Baselli, Jaguars Hall of Famer, has been brought in. He was brought in the second interview process with Liam Cohen after general manager Trent Baalke was fired. Jags will hire a new GM. Tony Baselli has been offered and accepted the position as the executive vice president of football operations with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that's got to tell you that Tony Baselli will be in the war room. He'll be in the war room. You know, when Tom Coughlin had that position as executive vice president, you know, back around 2016, 2017, part of 2018, everything went through Tom Coughlin. If Dave Codwell wanted to draft somebody, Tom had to sign off on it, yay or nay. I'm thinking Tony's probably got the same deal. I'm guessing. I I want offensive linemen early and often. I've been saying that for years. We'll see what happens. But Michigan's got a really good defensive tackle that could, the defensive lineman from Michigan could go to the Jaguars at 5. Maybe it's an offensive lineman like Will Campbell from LSU. Will Campbell's a top 10 pick, as John Gaylor told me. JC's really high on Will Campbell out of LSU, the left tackle. There's going to have to be a guard for the Jaguars early in the draft, too. You need an offensive tackle and offensive guard, a big defensive tackle at some point in time early in the draft, and a cornerback. I think those are the 4 biggest needs. You do have running backs on this roster. I'm assuming ETN will be back for his 5th year, the 5th-year option. Tank Bigsby still on a rookie deal. I believe Tank is going into his third year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe it's his 3rd year. And so Tank Bigsby still on a rookie deal. You got Brian Thomas Jr., I should say. Excuse me. Brian Thomas Jr. as a rookie emerged as honestly, the Jacksonville Jaguars' #1 wide receiver. 1,200 yards receiving, a slew of touchdowns. So you've got a quarterback who's need to stay healthy. He's been hurt the last couple of years off and on. Offensive line early and often in the draft with at least 2 offensive line picks, an offensive tackle and an offensive guard early would be on my wish list. Not everybody feels like I do. Then when Trevor gets hurt halfway through the year, well, you might have some flashy guys, but the backup quarterback's playing. You got to keep that in mind. SEC Power Rankings, BigJReport.com, SEC Power Rankings. By the way, the Icemen lost in overtime to the South Carolina Stingrays on Sunday, February the 16th. I believe it was 5-4 in overtime. But the Icemen still having a great year. They got 30 wins, 16 losses, and 3 overtime losses. So they're 30, 16-3, having a great year in the East Coast Hockey League, Southern Division of the East Coast Hockey League. BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. We finally got all 14 put together, and we're a little different now. I'm going to take Georgia. They won the SEC championship game. Texas may have had the better record, but I'm going to give Georgia the nod as #1, the numero uno of the Southeastern Conference in football. Georgia first in my final SEC Power Rankings. They won the SEC title game. The SEC title game has got to mean something, and it means Southeastern Conference championship. Georgia won that game in overtime. And what was the name of the kicker for Texas? Man, he put the game into overtime, right? And then Georgia won the game in overtime. And, man, that was a good football game. I mean, it was low scoring versus Texas. Why don't the SEC title game? SEC title game was in December, right? 2024. This is going back several weeks. What was the guy's name that kicked the field goal? Georgia won in overtime 2018. Thus, they're at the top of the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. What was the kick for Texas? Kicked the field goal. Auburn. a kicker named Auburn was kicking field goals. I believe he hit the tying field goal that went to overtime. A kicker named Auburn. You know, Auburn's one of Georgia's biggest rivals. But the kicker's name was Auburn with Texas. Okay. So, SEC Power Rankings, Georgia won with an 11-3 overall record. I guess that was before any of the playoff games. I think that was actually before the SEC championship game, wasn't it? Because I believe these conference records are actually If you counted the SEC championship game, Georgia would be 7-2 in the conference. But prior to the SEC championship game, they were 6-2. So if you say Georgia won the SEC title game, that would make Georgia and Texas both 7-2 in the conference, and that means Georgia's number one in the SEC. They won the title game. Texas number 2 at 13-3 overall. Tennessee 10-3, 6-2 in the conference. I got Tennessee third. Ole Miss fourth, winning the Gator Bowl here in Jacksonville over Duke. Ole Miss went 10-3 overall, 5-3 in the SEC. I got Bama. Whoa, Nelly. I got Bama at number 5, 5-3 in the SEC. 9-4 overall. Losing the bowl game to Michigan did not help them. LSU 6th at 5-3 in the SEC, 9-4 overall. Missouri has been a unbelievably quiet 10-3. I got them 7th, 5-3 in the conference. 8th, I got South Carolina 5-3 and 9-4 overall. Remember, Missouri was 10-3 overall, like Ole Miss, but I got Alabama and LSU sandwiched between Ole Miss and Missouri. So I got Ole Miss 4th, Alabama 5th, LSU 6th, Missouri 7th. South Carolina 9-4 overall. They had a good year. South Carolina ranked 8th. Texas A&M, I got them knotted just ahead of Florida because they beat Florida in the regular season. I think Florida, after that Texas A&M game, became a much stronger team. The bye week before the UCF game, Billy Napier, I think, really changed things and turned things around in the bye week before the UCF game. And then Florida came out and had a really big win over UCF. Gus Malzahn, the coach, left, and he is now the offensive coordinator of Florida State. I believe Scott Frost, who, left Nebraska a couple of years back, now he's back at Central Florida, I believe. Isn't that really a change of events? And had a lot of success there. At UCF, Scott Frost. A lot of people don't even know this. I saw the story here a few weeks ago. UCF Knights football, Scott Frost. How about that? Scott Frost sends clear message on next UCF quarterback. Isn't that interesting? Gus Malzahn left. UCF was not having a good year. He left to become the offensive coordinator at Florida State. I don't believe Billy Napier named a new offensive coordinator, right? There were rumors of Chip Kelly, and then Chip Kelly went back to the NFL. He's, I believe, the Raiders offensive coordinator now. So this is really interesting. So Scott Frost is a guy. I mean, Florida had interest in him too. Then he went to Nebraska, his alma mater. So it's interesting to go back to where you came from, and coaches have done that in the past. Billy Donovan went to the Orlando Magic one time for a couple of days, and then came back as a Florida Gator basketball coach. Changed his mind. Scott Andrew Frost is an American football coach and player who is the current head football coach of the UCF Knights. He was also the head coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers from 2018 to 2022. He was a UCF coach prior to that. Now he's gone back to Central Florida. Now we're talking about the SEC, so we don't want to get too much into Central Florida, who's now a member of the Big 12. And what's interesting, they were not a member of the Big 12 when Scott Frost was there before. Okay, so we go back to I got Texas A&M just a nod ahead of Florida because of the Texas A&M win. I think Florida became a much better team after the Texas A&M loss. It was a win for Texas A&M, but a loss for Florida early in the year. I've got Texas A&M 5-3. Texas A&M was 5-3 in the SEC, 8-5 overall. Florida 4-4 in the conference, 8-5 overall. So I've got Missouri 7th, South Carolina 8th, Texas A&M 9th, Florida 10th, Vanderbilt, who had 3 conference wins. That's pretty darn good for Vanderbilt. And I think Vanderbilt beat both Alabama and Auburn, right? Isn't that amazing in 1 year? Vanderbilt is 11th in the SEC. I got Florida 10th at 8-5 overall. Vanderbilt 11th at 7-6 overall. Arkansas 12th at 7-6 overall. Auburn at 5-7 is 13th in our BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. Oklahoma, welcome to the SEC. Oklahoma 2-6 in the conference, 6-7 overall. Kentucky really had a down year at 1-7 in the conference and 4-8 overall. And Mississippi State is missing one Mike Leach, who passed away a couple of years ago, right after he won the Egg Bowl over Ole Miss. Boy, times have changed. Mike Leach passed away, and now the Mississippi State program, the Mississippi State program is kind of back down in the dumps now. Mississippi State 16th, rock bottom in the SEC. Mississippi State Bulldogs 0-8, 2-10 overall. And that is my report on the SEC Power Rankings. I've got them written down, and I think we'll put them up on the website soon too. But there you go. That's the latest SEC Power Rankings, the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. Georgia 1, Texas 2, Tennessee 3rd, Ole Miss 4th, Alabama 5th, LSU 6th, Missouri Tigers 7th, South Carolina Gamecocks 8th. Boy, there's 3 teams in the SEC named the Tigers, right? Missouri, Auburn. The Auburn also goes as the War Eagles sometimes too, or a lot of times. You got Missouri Tigers, Auburn Tigers, LSU Tigers. Sometimes the LSU Tigers are known as the Bayou Bengals. But again, top to bottom, Georgia number 1 in the final 2024 SEC Power Rankings. Georgia first, Georgia number 1, Texas 2, Tennessee 3, Ole Miss 4th, Alabama 5th in SEC college football, 6th LSU, Missouri 7th, South Carolina in the 8th position, Texas A&M at 9th. Florida came a long way just to get in the top 10 of the SEC. Florida 10th, Vanderbilt 11th, Arkansas 12th, Auburn 13th, Oklahoma 14th, Kentucky 15th, and rock bottom, no Vanderbilt at the bottom. Vanderbilt's 11th in the SEC Power Rankings, the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. Vanderbilt 11th, Arkansas 12th, Auburn 13th, Oklahoma, welcome to the SEC. Oklahoma's 14th, Kentucky 15th, and the Mississippi State Bulldogs, rock bottom, after Mike Leach passed away just a couple of years ago. The Mississippi State Bulldogs, do you know they were known as the Maroons, the color maroon, before they were called the Mississippi State Bulldogs? That's a little fact. That was before I was born. They were always Mississippi State Bulldogs when I started following the SEC in the early 1970s. But I heard the stories, read about they were known as the Mississippi State Maroons way back before I was born, I believe, or right after I was born. The Mississippi State Maroons, now known as the Mississippi State Bulldogs, 0-8 in the conference and 2-10 overall. They had just an awful season. Really beautiful day in Jacksonville. Clear skies, clear sunny skies during the daylight hours. High temperatures bumping up to near 60. Lows tonight dropping into the 40s with clear skies down to around 41. Winds will pick up at times. It'll be breezy at times. Winds out of the north at as much as 10 to 20 miles per hour in Jacksonville and throughout Duval and North Florida and surrounding areas. That's going to do it for the Teal Shirt Report podcast. The sponsors are in the ticker, Salsa Realty and Capital, the MadMaxMix.weebly.com, Mad Max Get Well. JC, check out his show live from the pub on Thursday nights with JC at LakeUfallahits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. And again, for your real estate needs, Saucer Realty and Capital. For your real estate needs, whether it's home, residential, business, or commercial real estate, Saucer Realty and Capital for North Florida and surrounding areas. I want to thank our executive producer, JC, for putting all this together. Thank you, JC, our executive producer. Also, Alex Nunnery. Got the River City Rumble coming up, JU and UNF on February the 20th. I believe that'll be their second meeting of the college basketball season. Florida Gators are killing it in college basketball. They're 23-3 in the March to come NCAA basketball tournament, March Madness. I think Florida will be a number 1 seed, or at worst a number 2 or number 3 seed, but probably a 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament. Florida is racking up the wins. Unbelievable. Florida Gators having a tremendous year. And probably what I should do is double check the standings in the SEC. I believe I've got the record right for college basketball. Let's see. We'll check out. Let's see here. Let's take a look. We might as well take a look at basketball. I was going to do that on the next podcast, but at least we'll take a look at Florida Gator basketball. The Gators, men, already over 20 wins on the season. Having a great year. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Let's attempt to pull up basketball. Again, a special thank you to my executive producer, JC, also Alex Nunnery, another producer. Also want to thank John Gaylor, our correspondent and contributor of the Teal Shirt Report podcast and BigJReport.com. Men's basketball, SEC, Florida Gators be most likely a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed in next month's March Madness NCAA basketball tournament. Still a lot of basketball to go. Let's see. Auburn is 23-2. Alabama's 21-4. Florida is 22-3. Did I say 23-3? I meant to say the Florida Gators basketball program is 22-3 and a very impressive 9-3 in the SEC. We'll talk more college basketball most likely on the next podcast or the one after that. This has been the Teal Shirt Report podcast. We are absolutely on a beautiful, clear, sunny day with the temperature just dropped to 41. Wow. 41, the projected low for late tonight as well. We hit a low now of 41 on Monday morning, February the 17th at about 7:31 a.m. It's 41 degrees here in Jacksonville, Florida. The Jacksonville Icemen, sadly, they lost a game. They had beaten Orlando in an overtime win a couple of nights earlier. That was what was that, the Saturday night game? Right after Valentine's Day. The Icemen beat Orlando 3-2. But then the Icemen, let's take a look here. Here we go. The old internet, man. The internet will bounce around, slow down, and there we go. Okay. You can't blame everything on the internet, though, but at times it is a problem with the internet. The Jacksonville Icemen fall short in a 5-4 overtime loss against the South Carolina Stingrays on Sunday, February the 16th of 2025. But the Icemen, still my favorite hockey team. The Jacksonville Icemen still having a great season at 30 wins. That's right, 30, 16-3 in the Southern Division of the East Coast Hockey League. As of today, February the 17th of 2025. Great going, Bob Arablo, all the coaches, the players. The Icemen having another great season, and they'll be in the playoffs. And playoffs, let's hope they can go a little bit further in the playoffs for the Jacksonville Icemen. At least with the Icemen and the East Coast Hockey League, we're talking about a team that's going to be actually going to the playoffs. That'll do it for the Teal Shirt Podcast. I'm your host, Scott. Have a great day, and hey, I am out. Take care. Thank you. Thank you for listening and watching.